Gotta do something.
When I first no. When I first got sober from alcohol, everyone had all this advice of what I should and shouldn't do. Some of it was fantastic, and some of it was actually detrimental. Some of it could have landed me back in the relapse bandwagon, struggling forever and ever. And today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk to you, if you are newly sober or even if you've been sober a while, about some of the things that are floating around out there as good advice. Because what you're going to notice is that when you go to get sober, suddenly everyone is an expert on how to get and stay sober. However, there's some things that are damaging, some things we need to focus on, and some things we need to stay away from so that we can stay sober without relapsing. And I see it time and time again. There's lots of channels here on YouTube and other places where the person touting the sobriety method is just cycling through relapse over and over and over again for many years. And I don't want that to be your story. I didn't want it to be my story. And Terry sure as heck didn't want it to be his story. So today we are going to talk about the truth of what you need to know and some things that you need to watch out for if you're newly sober. So Terry, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. It's a beautiful rainy day here. Let me tell you a little bit about my experience with when I was getting sober and that little bit of early sobriety. So I realized that alcohol was a big problem, and I finally let it be known to my significant other at the time that I had to stop and that I had a problem, and she actually had no idea. But um, she helped me reach out and get some help. I went to rehab. In rehab, I learned a lot. The director was one of those guys that, like, you don't want to listen to me. We're glad to refund your misery. You could just leave. He was pretty hardcore, straight up. He told it like it was. But I learned so much. I learned how to stay sober and what to do to stay sober, and just all these things. I got out of there feeling great. And now rehab itself, that was kind of at least that first week was a pretty difficult time because of the detox. And if you are struggling with alcohol, you do need to see a doctor, get professional help. I needed it. It was absolutely necessary for me. But anyways, so I got out of there, and I started doing what they told me to do. I went to meetings. I got the alcohol out of my house, and this is very good advice. And don't go to dangerous places. Stay away from those drinking friends. Those are all really good things. But I started drinking again, and it was about a month after I was sober, and I started drinking again. Now, a lot of people call that a relapse. I just call it started drinking again. It wasn't a relapse. It was drinking. And I don't think I was done. I don't know. I have kind of figured out what caused that. When I did end up in the hospital and I did finally get sober, and I haven't had a drink since then. And why was that? There was some big things that changed in me and that changed with me. And now that's what we're going to talk about today. Because there are those obvious things that we need to do. Like I said, you need to, stay out of the liquor aisle at the store if you're able to. I mean, a lot of places the liquor's everywhere, but stay away from it. Don't go to bars. Don't hang out with those drinking friends. Try to take a different way home from work if you're used to dropping by the liquor store on the way home. Things like that. There's some really obvious things that we can do. And then there's some not so obvious stuff. So how about you, Marcus? How did your story relate?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty much the same, except my relapses happened before I went to rehab.
Yeah.
Rehab was kind of a last-ditch attempt for me to save my family, save basically the life that I knew. And it was very, very difficult. I was kind of at the end of my rope there, and I needed something to work. I needed to have something to where it was the end of it. And up until then, I had been struggling in and out of trying to get sober on my own, going to meetings, going to recovery, religious groups, going to therapy. I think at one point I had about 3 different therapists at the same time, which was like, okay, how do I find time to do anything? And nothing seemed to work because no one really wanted to tell me the truth about, you know what, it is the alcohol. That is what it is. That is your problem. You are an alcoholic. And it was difficult for me to admit that because I wanted it to be everything but the alcohol. I didn't want to be beat by some stupid drink that other people can have plenty of, and I just can't. And so it was very difficult. But when I went into rehab, I went there. I think I was the only person who carried around notebooks everywhere in rehab. I'm just kind of like that, you know. I take notes, and I was like, hey, if I'm going to pay out of pocket, since insurance was like, yeah, we're not going to help you out there, even though you pay absorbent amounts for insurance, we're not going to help you out. And so I was like, okay, well, if I'm paying for this and I got to spend a month away from my family and my life and my business, then I'm going to get as much as I can out of this. And what I got, there was some interesting stuff. They delved into some family things and some therapy ideas and everything. And some of it was good, and I took some notes. But the main thing that I needed to learn was that alcohol needed to be off the table no matter what. Like, no matter what you're going through, if you're an alcoholic and you're trying to deal with stuff, yeah, that ain't going to work. You need to deal with the alcohol first and foremost. And I pretty much can say very confidently that the other stuff will fall by the wayside. Some of it might be difficult. I know Terry had some difficult things. I had some difficult things once we did get sober. But I couldn't have dealt with anything if I kept drinking. I wouldn't be here to deal with stuff. And I think that that's important, and a lot of people overlook that because you're looking so hard for something that's not there, and that is the magic reason you drink. The magic reason you drink is because you're an alcoholic. Well, no, Marcus, you don't understand. I really tried to stop. Yeah, I do understand. I really tried to stop too. And the reason you can't stop is because you're an alcoholic, and you need to realize that that is the number one thing. Once you deal with that, you're good.
Yeah, hey, I never thought about the fact that I never took notes when I was in rehab. Maybe that was part of it. I don't know. But I joke. I was very serious when I was in rehab. And yeah, that Marcus has said it right there, that alcohol is the problem. And that was the problem then. If I was to take a drink now, alcohol would be the problem now. And for me, I had to figure out what to do to keep alcohol off of the table. And when I, in between that rehab time and the time I started drinking again, alcohol was off the table, sort of. You know, I still had a little bit of grasp on it in the back of my mind. And when I finally did get sober for good, I realized that alcohol was not an option, no matter what. And so I had to start to do things in my life that was going to make sure that I didn't start to think that alcohol might be, you know, a choice. It had to become no choice whatsoever. I cannot drink it. That's the way I had to approach this. And so I had to start to develop this life that I didn't have to run from anymore. And that was starting to do things that I like to do. So I didn't take a job that I didn't like. That was, I was unemployed when I got sober. And I did take a job eventually after a few months of recovery. I took a job that I would enjoy doing. And I did in the beginning stop hanging around those friends. You know, I've already mentioned that a couple times now, but I did stop hanging out with those drinking friends. As far as when they're drinking, you know, I didn't go meet them in bars. All those people are still friends, actually. You know, and when I was still living down there where I got sober, I would go hiking with those friends, go on bike rides, do things that don't involve alcohol. If they were going to go out for beers afterwards in the beginning, I'd go home. You know, now I can go hang out with them a little bit, but it's not like I'm going to go drinking with them afterwards. They're going to have a beer with lunch. I'm going to have a Coke with lunch, something like that. But it was things like that, starting to do things that I liked to do, and starting to look at life in a different way. It's all about perspective for me. I don't focus on those negative things in life. Yeah, I watch the news. I watch it a little bit too much. I get a little bit crazy, but I know when to turn it off. You know, things like that. Things when we're in our, well, at least me, when I was in my drinking days, um, a lot of things happened, and I felt that they happened to me. I didn't feel that they were caused by my drinking. And if I really look at it deep down, I realize that a lot of it was me. And yes, some things happened to me as well. But I started to focus on the positive parts of life and understand that things happen. That's life, and there's other things that I had to take into account that, like, I thought that when I was drinking, I thought that when I stopped drinking, everything in life is going to be great. It's going to turn around. I'm going to get rich. I'm going to get famous. All this great stuff is going to happen. That didn't happen. And on top of that, all those problems that I caused, they're still there. I had to deal with them. And so it was kind of a rude awakening to realize that life's still there. Life happens. Bad things happen. I've had a few deaths of loved ones in sobriety. A couple of my dogs have passed away in sobriety. It's tough, but being sober, I'm able to deal with it in a positive way, and that's because I took alcohol off of the table. It's not a choice. It's not an escape for me. And if you look back on it, a lot of us, when we were drinking, a lot of us would use alcohol, I mean, to have a good time mostly, but also as an escape. It's like I had a really bad day, I need a drink. Something really bad happened, I need a drink. And realizing that that doesn't solve the problem, it just numbs it for a short time. And many times the problem comes back the next day or a little bit later, worse. And that's what would happen with me, is that I had to make that realization that alcohol isn't solving anything, and understanding that alcohol has no benefit whatsoever. It's a poison that we're putting in ourselves, and it doesn't do any good. Sure, people that don't have problems with it, it may help them relax a little bit. It did with me in the beginning, I guess. But in the long run, there's no benefit whatsoever. It affects every cell of our body. Many people, when they drink too much, they start to get really bad physical problems, and that's just what it does. And as soon as I made that realization and realized that living life sober is great, I mean, I remember in real early sobriety, I had to go shopping, the grocery shopping. I went grocery shopping at 10 p.m. I never would have been doing that in my drinking days. There's just no way. And sure enough, I'm in line and everybody else has alcohol, and I have this big shopping cart full of food. And it's just one of those little memories that are like, wow, I can go shopping anytime I want, 24 hours a day, because I'm sober. I don't have to worry about things like drinking and driving, or what I said last night that may have caused or hurt a relationship. But
Yeah.
there's other things to be careful of when you first get sober. Um, I don't know if any of you have been in any sort of a sobriety program. You may have heard the relationships, and what a lot of people say, and this is kind of true, is changing a relationship. And sometimes you have to escape out of a situation, or you have to leave a situation because there's just too much drinking temptation. But I'm talking about, like, you first get sober and you see somebody that's interesting to you, and maybe you're like, hey, yeah, all right, a new relationship, let's try that. That a lot of people will suggest that maybe you just hang on and just keep working on sobriety. And for me, that's it's not just relationships. It was big changes in life for me, is try not to change too much in life if you don't have to. Some things, like I said, you have no choice. You need to change the situation. But if you're able to just stick it out for 6 months, a year, that's what I did. I actually got married a year and a half after I got sober. And that was a conscious decision of, we're going to wait and we're going to see what's going on, and we're just going to keep things going the way they are right now. And we did that, and we're still happily married. So that was very helpful. It looks like we got lots of comments there.
Yeah, it's interesting. I remember talking on the grocery store thing. I remember when I got sober, and I'm getting a little echo from you. I remember when I got sober. Oh, still got an echo from you. Is it your
For
speakers?
me,
Yeah, I think it's coming from your. I believe so. Let's see. Yeah, I don't have any sound on here, so. But yeah, I remember when I first got sober. Going to the grocery store was actually a really anxiety-provoking thing. It was like I could almost not go because it was very. It wasn't so much the alcohol; it was just being out in public, being sober. It was difficult, and I found out that that was actually pretty common. People getting anxious at the grocery store and things like that. Um, Dealing with relationships, stuff like that is very difficult in sobriety. And I think that one of the things I learned in sobriety is to slow life down. Before I was sober, I was drinking, and every day blended into the next day. Everything was in a rush, in a hurry. I had to do things right here, right now, or it was, detrimental. And then I realized that maybe it's my older age and also sobriety, but I realized, hey, you know what? Things aren't as chaotic as I thought they were. I can just relax. I can take a day. I can chill. And with relationships, it's like, okay, everyone is rushing to get into things. Well, if it's meant to be, it'll last. It's not like it's going to go anywhere. If it goes somewhere, then it probably was supposed to go somewhere anyway, and you save yourself some trouble. And I've learned that, some of the best decisions do take time to make. Sometimes you gotta wait it out and understand yourself and understand what you feel and what you think, with the exception of alcohol, because alcohol was one of those decisions that I needed to make right away. I needed to say, I am stopping drinking. I'm going to go to the doctor. I'm going to figure out what's going on with my body and my mind, and I'm going to get some help because I can't live this way anymore. And I think that's one of the decisions that we do need to make right away and understand, hey, this is causing a lot of trouble and other things. And really watch the triggers that you have. Watch what makes you want to drink. Get a friend or a loved one that you can talk to that you could be honest with and say, hey, I'm struggling with this. I think that's why, even though it's not mentioned in the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, sponsors are something that helps people because it gives you a little buffer. Hey, before I go to the bar, I can call this person. And sometimes even if that person's not even a good sponsor, just the act of calling will break that up. And I always, in early sobriety, I always looked at it like I want to make alcohol really hard to get. Right? I'm gonna go and leave my ID in the car. Right? Not that I'd probably get carded now. They'd probably be like, yeah, you're well past the drinking age. You're pretty good. But leave that buffer there where it's difficult. Go to a grocery store that doesn't sell alcohol, or send someone else to the grocery store, or get DoorDash or something, and start to make it difficult to get alcohol. Because the easier it is, the easier it's going to be. It's going to be easy to slip. I know Terry talked about early sobriety, and I believe you said that you took all the alcohol out of your house for a time being. Same with me. Yeah, same with me, because if it was there, I would have drank. Like, there's sometimes in 3-4 years sober when I had a rough day, and if it was there, I probably would have drank it. Right? It's like, hey, if it's there, I mean, that's an easy thing. So make it difficult. Make it hard to drink.
Yeah. I even had some painkillers that were, old painkillers. Got rid of those. Got rid of mouthwash, cough medicine, anything with alcohol in it. I just got rid of it. Not that I did drink any of that, but for me, it was a matter of I didn't know what would trigger me or anything. I just had heard what other people have told me about that. So I just took as many precautions as I possibly could. And like Mrs. B, you said earlier, I was doing so good drinking zero liquor, and then they just made a liquor store right across the street from my house. Ugh. And I hear you, that's tough. It definitely is. But for me, especially when I was living in California, like the supermarkets, the liquors, they got it right by the front door when you walk into the market. It's everywhere. It's by the eggs, it's by the milk, it's by the liquor. it's, it's right across from the bread. In fact, I could tell you right now where the liquor that I drank is sitting on that shelf, even though I haven't been there in a year and a half. I bet it's in the same place right across from the bread that I buy. And it's just that way. And that's why we can't let the outside influences be a factor as far as, I mean, yes, there's these things in early sobriety to do, but at the same time, we do have to develop a relationship with ourselves and alcohol where it's just not a factor anymore. And that's what it's gotten to for me. And that's through changing my perspective towards life and alcohol. And that's so if a liquor store does go in across the street from me, I don't. It's okay, liquor store. That's great for everybody else that wants to go get liquor. For me, it's a no-go, and I'm not going to go in there to get my bag of chips because I want some Doritos or something. I'm not going to do that. And that's kind of how I have to look at it. And I did want to congratulate somebody with 6 years. It's James. Or 6 weeks. Congratulations, James. That's awesome. And you were saying that your anxiety has not quite left you yet. And yeah, I definitely had anxiety. And you know what? I still have anxiety. I'm almost 10 years sober. So anxiety is part of life. It's going to happen. It's a matter of learning the fact that it's going to happen and you can get through it. And it's just a matter of not focusing on those negative things. At least for me, it's a matter of not focusing on those what ifs that could happen. Focusing on what can I do today to move forward? What can I do today to be positive? What can I do today to enjoy? And I understand there's some things that are making me nervous that might be coming up, and I'll deal with them the best I can. I'll prepare for them. That's the best way to deal with things that cause me anxiety is prepare for it. Like making a speech. That would cause me a ton of anxiety. Making a speech, prepare for it. Figure out what I'm going to say. Write it down. Whatever. Things like that.
And I think that for anxiety, realizing that we've been through worse really helps. Right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
I tell my youngest daughter this all the time because she's always struggling with anxiety and stuff. And she had a medical thing she dealt with last year. And I'm like, hey, you made it through that. I mean, everything else is kind of easy. Same with rehab. I'm like, hey, I went to rehab. That's okay. Anything else, like other than being crammed in a house and dealing with all this stuff and dealing with all these people that some of them were kind of interesting folks, I think I'll be okay. Like, I think going to the store is going to be a little easier now. I noticed that for me, it was interesting. My anxiety went away about 7.5, 8 years into sobriety. Two things coincided with it. One was the loss of my dad, and the other was quitting cigars. I don't know if the quitting cigars helped or if it was a combination or what was going on. But I found it interesting because one day I just was sitting there at a place that I knew I would normally be anxious, and it wasn't there. And I've had little spikes, but nothing has been really that anxiety provoking since then. And a lot of it is the work that I've done with, understanding life in a different way, realizing that things aren't always what they seem, and realizing that, I'm not the only one that matters. Anxiety is a very selfish thing to feel. It's all about me. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen here? How is this going to work? Who's going to hurt me? And I've realized that, oh, hey, you know what? I've made it through some things. Like, hey, if you've gotten sober and you've stayed sober 6 weeks, that's pretty cool. That's a big achievement. That was difficult. Probably more difficult than just dealing with a little anxiety. Another thing that helps with anxiety for me is put your feet flat on the ground. Flat. Put them flat on the ground. Relax. Breathe slowly. And realize that everything's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. Make it through. We always do. there's a medical issue, you go to the doctor. The doctor knows what to do. I don't know what to do. And that's a lot of what anxiety is about too, is like, it's things I can't control. And that is why the serenity prayer works so well, because it's, grant me the serenity to accept the things I can't change. What can't I change? 90% of the things that cause me anxiety. Right? People are like, I'm having anxiety about, the news stuff that's going on across the sea. Well, I can't really do anything about that. Does that mean I don't care? No, it just means I'm not going to get into arguments about things I don't really know about, because I really don't know about it, and I really can't do much about it. My family's still very religious, and they're like, oh, well, this is the end. And I'm like, well, it's been the end since the Bible was written. Like, literally, when the thing was written, they thought it was the end. And now here we are, 2,000 years later, they still think it's the end. And I don't know what the end is. I have no idea. I don't know if there is one. I have no clue. And I find that the less I know, the less anxious I am. Because when I used to know everything, and I knew exactly what was going to happen. I knew the verse to quote. I knew what politicians were right and wrong. I knew everything. But I was also an anxious wreck, drinking my way through life. And then I realized, well, you know what? I barely graduated high school. I didn't go to college. I don't got any PhDs or letters after my name. I don't really know much of anything. Because, the economy was better under this person. Well, was it, or was it just an ebb and flow? Is it just the way life works? Do I agree with certain things? Do I have opinions on things? Absolutely. Am I going to let it get me anxious and drunk? No, I'm not. Because at the end of the day, I lived anxious and drunk, and it didn't have a positive outcome in the things I was worried about. And now I live sober, and I'm not anxious, and I don't worry, because the outcome is going to be the same whether I worry or not. It's like Alan Watts says, you can find anything to worry about if you're the worrying type. You will find it. That is how it works. Just like with me. I'm a business person. I trained myself to be a business person. I see the world in terms of business more often than not. Why? Because I trained myself to be that way. You trained yourself to be anxious through the way you were brought up. And it wasn't conscious. It just happened. Hey, I need to worry about these things because I'm in an unsafe environment. And now you're older and you realize, well, this isn't really serving me. It's just making me anxious and not working. So we could set that aside and say, you know what? I don't really need to be anxious. I think I'm going to be okay.
Yeah, totally. And if it is the end, it's the end for everybody.
Exactly.
What's the matter? It doesn't matter. You're gonna be gone.
Yeah, it's kind of like, you could get
a sick way of looking at life. Anyways, congratulations on 60 days, Rose. And you were talking about you have better blood pressure, better digestion, better dealing with anxiety and depression. Exactly. And in 60 days of sobriety, that also was the case with me, is I became a lot healthier. And as time went on, I became even healthier and healthier. And when I started to put some effort into my health, even more so. I mean, it was wonderful. And Timber Wolf, you mentioned something that I think is important, and it's not something I do. I don't think Marcus does as well. You said keeping a journal helps me a lot. And I know a lot of people that are sober that write a journal. They do a daily journal, and just kind of what they write down is the good things that happened in life, maybe some of the mistakes they made during the day, how they're feeling today, how they're feeling about sobriety. And I know it helps a lot of people. And as far as more specifics at journaling, I don't journal, so I really couldn't tell you. But there's a lot of information on it that you can find out there, and it can be a very good tool as well. Definitely.
Yep. James says, I can't go to sleep without playing something on YouTube now in the background. That's something I've done every day in sobriety, every single day since I got sober, actually out of rehab, because I don't think we didn't have phones in rehab, so I wasn't able to listen to stuff. But once I got out of rehab, I started listening to a book on tape, a sobriety talk, a philosophy talk, every single night when I go to bed. Actually, last week I lost my wireless earbud, and it was difficult because I was like, hey, I can't listen to anything, so I had to make do with like an old recorder thing I had. But that's something that really helped me in sobriety was listening to something, getting new thoughts, because my old thoughts weren't working. So I needed some new thoughts, and I needed thoughts from new people. So reading books on tape and listening to different things definitely helped.
Yes, indeed.
Yes. All right. So if you guys got any comments or questions, we got like 5 or 10 minutes left. Also, Terry, tell me what you think of this. I hope I'm not putting you on the spot. I was thinking, what if we took stories of some of our viewers and listeners and read them as part of our channel? That way, people that were nervous about being on, they wouldn't have to be. They just submit their story and we read it.
That,
And of course, it would be anonymous.
that sounds great.
Would anyone be interested in that? Type story in the comments if you would be interested in that. We'd have a spot on talksober.com where you could submit your story, and we could read one a week or something like that. All right. Any last minute thoughts there, Terry?
You'll hear a lot of things about when you're newly sober, and actually a lot of what we've been telling you is when you're definitely it's important when you're newly sober, but it's important throughout your entire sobriety, really. I still use most of what I just talked about, and every day, and I'm going to continue to do so, and that's that positive attitude and changing the way I'm thinking, alcohol off of the table, and that's really important. And I do still have to be aware of my thinking, and I have to catch myself, and I do have to be careful. And that's what I found has kept me sober so far. And understand that I don't got this as far as, I'm not sober for good for sure, unless I keep doing something towards my sobriety on a consistent basis. And that's what I need to do. And that's what's worked, and hopefully that's what will continue to work.
Absolutely.
And tardigrade, I hope you make it, brother. Just right on. So, you want to talk about the program?
Sure. If you guys are interested in learning more about sobriety from us, you can check out talksober.com. Click the big yellow button that supports what we do here on the channel. Helps us keep the lights on here, and we got lots of lights. We got a fancy Talk Sober light, and Terry's got a Talk Sober light there. We got all kinds of lights we need to keep on. And we want to do this more in a full-time basis and be able to provide more videos to you guys. And if you guys want to do that, just check out talksober.com, click the big yellow button. In that, you will get a bunch of PDFs, MP3s, videos, and all kinds of tools and worksheets to help you get and stay sober. Again, Terry and I are not addiction specialists or doctors or anything like that. This is just sharing what has helped us with our mindset. Never use this to replace going to the doctor or anything. But as far as mindset, it can definitely help you. You can also get a one-time private sobriety call with me and Terry if you want to click that button there. I think it's only like $97 for that. And our course is only like $27 a month, so it's less than a cup of coffee a day. Even like a low-budget cup of coffee at the local diner. I think those are like $3 now. I don't know. Everything's way too expensive, except our sobriety program. So lots of good stuff that you could check out there, and it does help us out. We appreciate it. And other than that, we'll see you guys next week. But yeah, check out talksober.com, and let's stay sober. Thanks for being here, guys.
Thanks, everyone.